Fab. So I think we'll get started in the interest of time because there's quite a lot to cover today. Welcome everyone and thank you so much for joining us. Today we'll be exploring how healthcare organisations can approach clinical safety and information governance in the use of ambient voice technology, specifically Accurx Scribe. We're here not just to introduce Scribe, but to answer your questions, speak quite frankly about clinical safety and governance, as well as implementation. And I have the privilege today of being joined today by a brilliant panel, each of us bringing a slightly different lens to the conversation. So my name is Satya, I'm the VP of Clinical here at Accurx, and I lead our clinical marketing and policy teams. I'm joined by Diane, who I'll let introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Diane, Chief Information Security Officer, and I'm leading the privacy and security team at Accurx.
Vish.
Hi everybody, my name is Vish. I'm part of the clinical team here at Accurx.
And we have a guest panelist as well, Osman, who's the CCIO of North East London ICB and a GP by background.
Thank you.
There you go. I was wondering whether you were going to introduce yourself,
Yeah.
Osman. I've done it for you.
Thank you.
Fab. So just before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. So the webinar will be recorded and we'll share it afterwards alongside a lot of the references, the resources that we're referencing today. And please do use the Q&A to submit all your questions through the presentation. We'll be answering them as we go, and we will also be leaving time at the end for Q&A as well. And do try and use the upvote function just to help us prioritise kind of the most burning questions and which ones to answer first. So today's agenda, we're going to cover what Scribe is, and then look at safety, look at information governance, and how that's then being used in real NHS settings and the experience in North East London ICB. We'll close with the Q&A, but our goal today is really to make this practical and applicable to your context. So let's get going. So I think this slide speaks for itself. NHS staff spend nearly a third of their time on admin. That means time away from patients, from reflection, and from recovery. We know that the admin burden can be really large, and that contributes directly to things like burnout, just inefficiencies and duplication across the system, and it increases the likelihood of error and patient harm. So the question really is, what can we do about it? You know, we're not going to be able to suddenly increase our capacity to be able to manage the increasing demand that we're seeing across primary care, across every care setting in the NHS, but we do want to find ways to support staff in managing their day-to-day workload. And so that's why we're introducing Accurx Scribe, powered by Tandem. So Scribe is an ambient voice technology which uses AI to transcribe audio from a patient consultation or dictation. So it is essentially listening in the background, and it then summarises that into a structured form for medical notes. It is more than just transcription though. So Accurx Scribe, we think, frees up time for patients. We know that when you're working clinically, you might be scanning the notes, trying to review blood test results, you know, clicking through different documents, etc. And all of that takes the focus away from the patient and often to focus on the computer whilst you're trying to make sure you capture and can get through that consultation effectively. For patients, that's quite a disruptive experience. You know, you lose the benefit of things like eye contact, just being able to give real time and space to the patient themselves. For staff, ambient voice technology and Accurx Scribe can cut the time spent on notes by 90%, making that conversation recording, dictation and document generation easier than ever. And we think this really is about supporting teams to work in a far more integrated way. So by streamlining that clinical documentation and freeing up some of those valuable resources, all of that should help reduce cognitive load, enable better coordination of care, because that information is now where it needs to be, when it needs to be there, and is supporting staff to get through their work. And I just want to take a minute to talk about our partnership with Tandem. So why Tandem? It was very deliberate. So when we first started exploring how we could support healthcare organisations with ambient voice technology, we ran what was called a request for proposal, where we asked different ambient voice suppliers and invited different ambient voice suppliers to a process where they were able to showcase and with the opportunity potentially to partner with us. Tandem and the team there just stood head and shoulders above the rest for a number of reasons. So the first being that we maintain our responsibility as a really high, to the NHS, as a very high priority. So we have very high standards for product and privacy, security and clinical safety, and Tandem we're head and shoulders above other suppliers in maintaining those requirements. And they were very compliant with all the standards that we need to be compliant with, as well as exceeding the compliance requirements, which Diane is going to touch on a little bit later. And none of that patient data crucially leaves Europe. There's no storage or retention of that audio, and where we know that AI is not infallible, it does make mistakes, but their product had lower hallucination and emission rates, and that data was never used to train AI. So crucially, no patient data is then used to train the AI model. So there's a clear differentiation of improving the product, maintaining the safety of product, but not relying on patient data to do that. And finally, it's just a fantastic team and culture which holds the trust of patients and users as paramount. That's something very near and dear to Accurx's heart. So we're really proud of this partnership and the value that it will bring to the NHS. And we think it's the perfect marriage of bringing Tandem's really exceptional Scribe functionality. As an organisation, 60% of their employees are clinicians by background, as well as combining that with Accurx's messaging capabilities. So that communication layer that Accurx offers, partnered with Tandem's functionality in providing Scribe, is really where we'll see care being transformed, moving away from very traditional manual methods of dictation. We've seen incremental gains through digital dictation, but actually the use of ambient voice technology, being able to scribe on the go in a setting where you're working, and seeing that reflected in the way that actually how patients then experience the NHS with seamless communication and with that integration with Accurx's communication products, as well as supporting healthcare professional working right across the health system. So we think this is just the first step into what is going to be a really transformational change for the NHS and fundamentally changing the way that staff and experience care. Staff and patients experience care. So how does it work? Vish is going to do a demo for you in a minute, but essentially you can launch Scribe from Accurx desktop, web or mobile, and you can then review that comprehensive and structured note, which is captured by the Scribe and the summarization of that. You can save it to record and then share it for onward comms with the patients and care teams right across the NHS. And I'm now going to hand over to the brilliant Vish to do a demo so you can actually see that functionality live.
Thanks so much, Satya. I'm going to very quickly share my screen. Here we go. Great. Just checking that everyone can see EMIS open in the screen in front of me. Fantastic. Awesome. So yeah, lovely to speak to everybody today. So I'm just going to walk you through how Accurx Scribe works in practice. As you can see on the screen, I'm sure this is something that's very, very familiar to everyone on the screen. This is EMIS that we have open and EPR commonly used in general practice. And you can see also the ever-present toolbar from Accurx here sitting on the top right-hand side. We've got a patient open here who's Minnie. Minnie today will actually be Satya, so I will just suspend your disbelief at the door. So we're going to have a simulated patient consultation with Minnie today. So how do you actually end up accessing Scribe from the toolbar? So what you can see here is a brand new button with a microphone here along the toolbar. This is Accurx Scribe. So really easy to access, pops up straight away from your toolbar. So I'm going to just click on Accurx Scribe over here, and that will open up your Accurx Scribe screen. Now, immediately you're able to go in and jump straight into a consultation here using that start button there. But before we dive in, I just want to explain a few things on the screen here just to give you some orientation around the product itself. You can see here at the bottom, we have something called encounter settings. This is how you can set the templates for your encounter and what type of consultation you want to have with your patient. Accurx Scribe actually has two different modes. You have something called consultation, which is probably your most common use case. This is where the scribe will actually listen into the conversation that you're having with the patient and generate a note off the back of that. Really good for those, face-to-face or telephone conversations that you have with patients as well. We've also got something called smart dictation. So this is where you're able to set a pre-made template and dictate straight into that template, almost in an unstructured fashion. It's actually really good at populating elements of that template. They were able to just speak into it. Really good for things like procedure notes that you have with patients, where you can go back and dictate into it afterwards as well. But for the purposes of the demo, we're going to focus on consultation today. You've also got a range of templates in which you can choose from. These have been carefully curated and crafted alongside our partners with Tandem, as well as with clinicians who work with us closely, to generate templates that are really suitable for use, as well as being able to be integrated seamlessly into your record. So for example, we've got the Accurx GP note here, which is a really useful template that can code straight back into the record in EMIS or System 1. But also, if you come from other care settings in secondary care or whatever it might be, we're actually building specialty specific template packages that are really well nuanced and curated for those specific clinical scenarios. So for example, if you're a gastroenterologist, there'll be templates around a general gastro outpatient review, but also for IBD or for liver disease and things like that. So really carefully curated templates here. And you've also got the ability to set your microphone. So whether that's a microphone from your computer, whether that's a plug-in microphone that you have, whether it's your dictaphone microphone, you can also set that microphone there as well. And before I go into the magic, just to look here on the left-hand side, you'll have a list of all the encounters that you've had previously. And if you've had any trouble with the product while you're using it, there's a user guide right there for you to use as well to guide you through that process. But what we're going to do, we're going to go straight into the scribe. I'm just going to click start here to begin with. And what I'm going to demonstrate now is, I'm speaking into the microphone. You can see that the orb is going bigger or smaller depending on how I'm speaking. And what the scribe is actually really good at is completely taking out that additional context that's probably not that relevant to the clinical consultation. Say me and Minnie talk about the weather, how her travel was into the GP practice today. All of that stuff will be filtered out so that doesn't make its way into the notes, which is really important. But I'm just going to pause that there and speak to Minnie or Satya today. So before we start, I just want to let you know that I'm using a tool called an ambient scribe today to help with writing up your consultation. It listens to what's said during our appointment and helps me generate my notes a bit more accurately, so I can focus more on you and less on typing while I talk. It doesn't record any video, it doesn't store the audio, it just helps write the summary more efficiently and securely. Are you happy for me to use it during our consultation?
Yes, that's fine.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to click on a resume encounter here. All right, so Minnie, what's brought you in today?
Well, hi, Doc. I've just got a really sore throat. It's been going on for a few days. It's not getting any better. I was really hoping to get something for it.
I'm sorry to hear that. How long have you had that for?
Since Sunday, so at least about 4 days now.
Okay, and have you had a temperature with that at all?
Yes, first couple nights felt pretty feverish and shivery. Had to take paracetamol to sleep, which is pretty unusual for me.
Sure. And have you had any other symptoms, a cough, a runny nose, or a blocked nose?
A bit of a blocked nose and a mild cough, but the sore throat is the worst.
Okay, and with that sore throat, are you managing to eat or drink okay?
I'm drinking okay. Eating is really painful, mostly just been on soup and yogurt.
Okay, and have you had any previous problems with your throat, like tonsillitis?
Well, yeah, that's why I'm here. So I did have tonsillitis a couple of years ago and I did need antibiotics then. That's why I thought I might need them again.
Okay, all right. And have you had any allergies to any antibiotics you've taken in the past?
No, nothing like that.
Okay, and have you got any long-term health conditions?
No, pretty fit and well.
Okay, all right. Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a quick examination, and what I'm going to speak my findings out into the scribe as well, so it can help capture that accurately. So if you just open your mouth and say, okay, so your throat's looking red and a bit swollen. I don't see any pus or white spots. Your tonsils are slightly enlarged. I'm just going to have a feel of your neck. Okay, there's some mild tenderness in the glands there, but nothing too severe. I'm also going to take some observations while we're here. So I'm just measuring your blood pressure, which is 120/70. Your heart rate stays 64, and your temperature is 37.1. I can also see your most recent height and weight on the record here. That's 1.78 meters and 80 kilograms. Okay, so this looks a little bit like something called a viral sore throat rather than a bacterial one. That's actually the most common cause, especially when there's a blocked nose or a mild cough along with it. So this really should get better on its own, if that makes sense.
Right. I was kind of hoping for antibiotics. It's been a pretty rough week and I've got quite a big week at work.
No, I totally get that. Sore throats can really knock you down. The tricky thing with this is antibiotics won't actually speed things up if we think it's a viral infection. What they can actually do is probably cause more side effects like diarrhea or rashes. That said, we can give you a delayed prescription. This means I'll send a prescription to your local pharmacy, but I'd like you to only use it if things get worse. Say you develop a high fever again, you can't swallow fluids, or it hasn't improved by about a week after you started having symptoms. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, okay, I can do that. That sounds fair.
All right. Well, in the meantime, some regular paracetamol and ibuprofen, lots of fluids and rest, and throat lozenges if they help. Most of these viral sore throats will settle within 5 days. But if you do feel worse, if you notice severe pain, high fever, problems swallowing, a rash, or starting to feel really generally unwell, then give us a call or call 111. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, I'll give it a few more days and see how it goes.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to pause that consultation there. So just a very quick simulated conversation between me and Minnie, roughly about 3 minutes long. There's a few other things you can do at this point. You can actually add some additional text. So if there's things from the clinical noting that you want to bring over, recent blood test results, imaging findings, whatever it might be, you can copy that context and put it into here so you can layer the scribe with a bit more context about that patient. So I'll just close that here. And what you can go away and straight away do is just finish and create the note. So we've obviously had that conversation with Minnie. It's listened to our conversation, it's transcribed it as we go along, and it's generating a note off the back of that in the format that we've selected, which is the Accurx GP note. So you can see the history here, sore throat for 4 days, the past medical history that was noted about tonsillitis, examination findings here as well, the cardiovascular, the ENT, the neck examination we did. Crucially, as well, it's able to pull through those SNOMED coded observations. So the blood pressure we talked about, the body weight, the standing height, the tympanic temperature, it's been able to pull those through as well as the plan that we discussed with the patient. You can also go back and refer to the transcription. So if there's things that you want to check against the transcription, sometimes it's quite useful to cross compare. So you can go back and have a read through the transcription as picked up by the scribe. So on that note here as well, a few other things you can do. You can add additional entries if there's things that you want. So if you do a peak expiratory flow rate, for example, you can add that in too. You can add or adjust here as well by speaking into the scribe to make any changes to the notes. So if you wanted to add some additional medication, change something around the examination findings, whatever that might be, but you can also dictate straight into each individual section of the note as well. Now, what we're going to do, before I do the save to record part of the functionality, there's other things you can do. You can create downstream documents. So say this was a case, maybe not for sore throat, but for other scenarios where you need to write an advice and guidance letter or a specialist referral letter, whatever it might be, Accurx Scribe actually helps you do that as well by creating downstream documents that you can then create and generate for your onward comms as well. So for advice and guidance and etc. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to click on save to record. Now, really important to note, there'll be a flag that comes up here if you've not made any edits or changes to the note. This is really important because we just want to make sure that you've reviewed that note before you actually put that into the record. So if you've not made any changes, if you've not made any edits, this will come up. So I can continue with saving to record here. It'll check that the right patient is open up in your EMR to save back to. Mimo is actually Minnie's preferred name, so that's why that's popped up, and we'll save that to record as well. So as you can, what we've shown so far, we've been able to show that consultation with Minnie. We've been able to show the note transcription that came, the note generation that came out of that transcription, and you can see here that the save has succeeded. So if I go back onto here as well, you'll see that at the top of Minnie's notes, the current patient's medical record has been updated. Just click to reload that. And that will then come up with that updated note in the format that we want it to be saved into EMIS. So you can see the history here, the examination, as well as those observable entity SNOMED codes that have come back into the record as well, and the plan and the allergies here at the bottom. So hopefully that gives you a good view of how Scribe works in practice and how it can save back to record as well. Also works really well for save to record for System 1 as well. All right, and I'll hand back over to you, Satya.
Thank you, Vish. I'll just share my screen again. 2 seconds. There we go. So hopefully you should be able to see the screen now. So thank you for that fantastic demo. Let's turn now to clinical safety and what it really means for any organisation when deploying a tool like Scribe. So firstly, you just wanted to cover off what your obligations are as an individual user, but certainly at practice level, or if you're working in a trust at trust level or at service level. So NHS England has certain requirements that any organisation that is implementing AI-driven technology or any software or product is responsible for ensuring that it doesn't compromise patient safety. This isn't a box ticking exercise. It is really about proactive risk identification and mitigation so that organisations are aware of any risk that they are taking on and making sure they have the relevant governance structures in place. So that does mean completing a DCB 0160. That's part of the NHS Clinical Safety Standard. It's a standard document. There are templates available that can help you to support completing those, as well as data protection impact assessments, which Diane is actually going to talk about in a minute. And that's really to ensure your deployment is safe, it's compliant, and it's transparent. DCP 0160 is a bit like a kind of checklist where you've gone through your understanding of the product, you've understand what risks exist in the product and what mitigations are in place either in the product through your business continuity procedures or through user training and implementation of the tool itself. Just as importantly is transparency and patient consent. So patients need to know that this technology is being used, and they should be informed before AI or ambient voice tech is used during their care. So best practice dictates that you should be capturing explicit patient consent, and we support that through the in-product onboarding. And as a reminder that actually if you are going to use this ambient voice technology, you should be capturing consent before you start. And finally, staff must be trained, not just in how to use Accurx Scribe, but also in how to use it safely. So that includes understanding what the AI can and can't do, and establishing the relevant governance structures so that clearly define who's responsible for oversight, and what's expected of staff when they're using Accurx Scribe. So how do we maintain kind of the safety and accuracy of Accurx Scribe? Well, really, clinical safety is a layered approach. It's built into Scribe from the ground up, really starts with the technology first. And so Tandem uses an industry-leading speech-to-text model, which has a low word error rate in English of about 4%. That's better than lots of other models out there. It includes then subsequently a validation layer. That's really to check for and remove any incorrect transcription errors, and that uses that output is using rules that can catch common errors. So that is continuously being trained through a rule-based model to identify common errors and exclude those from the transcription. To limit hallucinations, so that's really where an AI guesses inaccurately, or and therefore adds something to the transcription. We have a voice activity detection layer that ensures that sounds that aren't sufficiently audible or are too silent are filtered out. So as Vish kind of mentioned there, if there's a conversation happening in the background, Accurx Scribe won't actually pick it up. It will pick up audible sounds, won't pick up inaudible sounds, and that is to reduce the risk of hallucination. So essentially to reduce the risk of an AI guessing inaccurately because it's picked up background noise, a background conversation that is irrelevant to the patient's care. And then there's something called the temperature setting. And so that's part of the large language model that's really set to a setting which tries to reduce the randomness of the output, and therefore then reduces the risk of hallucinations quite substantially. So that temperature setting in Tandem AI is set to the lowest setting, by which therefore has the greatest impact on reducing the risk of those hallucinations. We also have prompt refinement to reduce those hallucinations. So that's validated with testing that Tandem do. So essentially, any time that there is, there's a concern or risk of hallucination, there's prompt refinement to reduce that risk, and that's continuously validated. So with every model that Tandem updates the transcription model with before they release that, that's then validated through the same regression testing to make sure that there is no increase in hallucination rate. And we're working with Tandem to build those specialty-specific word libraries so that it can better handle medical terminology that's specific to your specialty, your setting, and essentially reducing that friction for clinicians who are working in complex or more nuanced areas where the specificity and type of language really matters in terms of the impact to that patient and capturing that specialty-specific content. And crucially, and this is a really important one, the AI model is told explicitly not to make medical decisions. So it's not imperfect, no AI model is, but it won't generate diagnoses, investigations, or management plans. That's your role. That's not the role of Accurx Scribe. And so that's to reduce the likelihood of the model suggesting a diagnosis or investigation or a management plan there. And then the second layer of safety is the clinician. So we expect the clinician to review all Scribe outputs. That's why we don't have an automatic save to record. You do have to very intentionally click save to record in order to make sure that's actually has been reviewed. If a user does try to save a note, so if a staff member tries to save a note to the medical record or copy it faster than they could have possibly read it without having edited it, there's a warning that pops up to remind users to review their notes. And there's also a permanent warning that Tandem have since included actually in the user interface itself, which explains that Tandem can make mistakes. And again, just another reminder in the product that all outputs should be reviewed by clinicians. And then moving on to the kind of use of microphones and the post-market surveillance aspect of it. So this is where, microphone quality can be a bit of a hidden variable. So in order to manage that, we've added microphone testing during the onboarding to make sure that actually your microphone is of sufficient quality and to pick up when you'll first start using the product, to make sure that it can capture the consultation to a level that is relevant for the transcription and summarization. And we are also developing Accurx Mobile, so Scribe will soon be available on mobile experience. We've done a lot of work there to improve the microphone quality through our Scribe tool, Accurx Mobile, on Accurx Mobile, and that will enable users to make use of that kind of high quality microphone in their smartphone if you don't have a high quality microphone available to you. And finally, this is an ongoing process, so we need to be continuously monitoring and seeing how the model is doing against what we expect. So we've committed to post-market surveillance. So both Accurx and Tandem monitor the performance of Accurx Scribe in real-world settings. If hallucinations or errors occur, they are tracked, they are investigated, and they're subsequently used to improve the product. So safety isn't static. It is something that we are actively monitoring and continuously improving. If a clinical incident is raised, that is handled then in accordance with our established incident processes as well. So what do you need to do to get started? Well, it's really important to get on top of your compliance by completing your DCB 0160. The steps that are involved in that is first and foremost understanding what the product does. That's by testing it, by watching demos. We have lots of resources with screenshots, with recorded videos, where you can test and you can see how the product actually works and understand how it would be used in your clinical setting. Really, really important before starting your DCB 0160 that you understand what the product does and what it's intending to do. And beyond that, you need to review the Accurx clinical safety case report, which we can provide to you. So that's part of our obligations as a supplier to the clinical safety standards, which is called DCB 0129. We have our safety documents in place, and we will share those proactively with you and your ICBs. You need to review the clinical safety case that has a detailed breakdown, how the product works, what is the expected functionality, how we handle risk and mitigate for those in the product as well. And that includes our hazard log. So each hazard log will have the hazards that are captured, the possible underlying causes, what we've done from a user design perspective, and in-product mitigations, as well as which hazards are transferred over to the organisation that's implementing that product. Do appoint and work with your clinical safety officer. So we know some organisations have a clinical safety officer, some don't. Some ICBs do have this role at an ICB level, so they can support you through that safe implementation process in order to create that DCB 0160. If you have been a clinical safety officer in the past, you've gone through the NHS England training, and you'd like a refresher, there are also lots of resources available through NHS training, and that's a bit of a refresher on your clinical safety training and resources that are available through NHS England to help you manage that as well. And of course, the clinical team are on hand. So the Accurx clinical team, we are all trained clinical safety officers. We can support you to run workshops, to work with your organisations to understand the risks. Ultimately, the risk and liability lies with you at a user, as an organisational level. And so we want to make sure that you're well supported through that. So if there's anything that we can do, we're very happy to get involved, and we'll do proactive outreach to that effect as well. So secondly, moving on to transparency and consent. So like I mentioned, these are fundamental things that are just essential for patient trust. And so we prompt clinicians during the onboarding and the in-product experience to capture patient consent when Scribe is being used. That's through our onboarding materials. And like I said, in product onboarding, that's also there. We also remind users that AI is not infallible. It does make mistakes. So it saves time, absolutely, but clinicians have to be vigilant and review all their outputs. So AI should only really be used when you're actually checking those those Accurx Scribe generated notes before you're saving to record, before you're taking any further action on them. That human in the loop is really, really important. It's one of the strongest safety mitigations that we have in order to make sure that Accurx Scribe is not used in inappropriate ways. And of course, it should only be used in approved settings. So that means, clear rollouts, guidance and appropriate governance in place. We try and make sure that we've mitigated for unexpected use cases, but because of the breadth of use, and that's not always possible. So making sure that it's actually used responsibly, and by that you understand what your obligations are. Fab. And then getting started with staff training. So technology, as we all know, is only effective as the people using it. That's why training is really, really key. And we have lots of resources available to support you through that. So we offer daily live training, which is interactive, it's practical, it's led by our team. That's really to help staff get up and running as quickly as possible. For flexibility, there's also a library of on-demand learning materials that includes demos, FAQs, and how-to guides in our support centre. And we also provide direct support through Intercom, which is our support channel, as well as through direct access. So if you drop customer success an email there, one of our implementation support teams will be in contact with you to help you get set up. And of course, for wider rollout, we are running a series of webinars around Accurx Scribe that you can share internally to kind of support that continuous learning, and again, make sure that you're understanding what your obligations are. And then very important conversation, so talking about regulation. And the first thing to say is this is emerging technology, and it is a very evolving regulatory space that we are navigating. So even in the time from us deciding to partner with Tandem to launch, NHS England released guidance in April around the use of ambient voice technologies in healthcare settings. And there is some important nuance and distinction to understand here. So the UK Medical Device Regulation 2002 is the legal basis by which any supplier who is providing medical device must conform to. The Medicines, Healthcare Products and Regulatory Agency is essentially the regulatory agency that ensures that suppliers are compliant and maintains the registration of those suppliers who have medical devices. And that's all supplemented by NHS England guidance on their interpretation of the MHRA guidance and how that applies to healthcare settings. And so, like I said, this is kind of an evolving conversation, and this will continue to expand as ambient voice technology becomes more and more the norm within healthcare settings. So we know that not just Accurx Scribe, but other scribe tools are being used across the NHS by staff every day. And when we were first coming to market, it was very clear that our interpretation of the UK MDR was that Scribe would not be considered to be a medical device based on the intended use of the product, which was to support but not replace consultation, so specifically capturing the transcribing and summarization of a consultation, but not to be used to inform any medical decision making, etc. And obviously, since that, NHC have released their guidance and their interpretation of the MHRA guidance, which suggests that ambient voice technology should be considered as a medical device. And each day there is kind of evolving guidance on this. So in recognition of the fact that, one, there is some ambiguity there, but very much mindful of, again, our responsibility to the NHS and making sure that these products are rolled out safely with good governance in mind, we will be launching Scribe nationally with Tandem's Class 1 certification in place. The reason they have been able to do that so quickly is because they prioritise clinical safety and have been building the clinical evaluation, the understanding of this right from the get-go. And so really proud to say that, we will be launching that nationally with that certification in place. We will also be working towards Class 2A functionality. We have really big ambitions for this work, and how ambient voice technology can be embedded in workflows. And so for future functionality, we will also pursue Class 2A status. And I think I'm handing over there to Diane on this section.
Thank you, Satya. Hello, everyone. So first and foremost, I'm going to talk through obligations around security and privacy that you would need to consider when onboarding any ambient voice technology. I'm going to break this down into 3 separate but very interconnected areas. So firstly, so can we change the slide? Sorry. Okay. So firstly, you would need to consider the existing NHSC requirements that allow you to gain confidence that your supplier has good security and privacy practices. The supplier would need to show you evidence that they are testing their product for security flaws. And they would do this by sharing what we refer to as a penetration test report, or a summary of the results of this penetration test report. In addition to that, they would also need to confirm that they have passed Cyber Essential Plus audit and are also compliant with NHSC's Data Security and Protection Toolkit. This is so that the supplier can attest to good security and privacy controls. And finally, the supplier would need to showcase that they are prepared to manage incidents, so that this ensures continuity of their service to you. One way that they would do this is you could request from them a copy of their incident management process or their business continuity plan, for example. Now, over and above these existing requirements, NHSC has also very recently issued guidance on what to consider from a privacy and security perspective when onboarding Ambient Scribe technology. So since this technology is creating and processing a lot of personally identifiable data, it would be very important that you would confirm that this data is protected through proper security controls. And some examples of this are robust access controls that reduce risk of unauthorized access, and also data encryption that further protects the data being created by Ambient Scribe. In addition to this, NHSC guidance is also recommending that you consider mitigations for AI-specific security and privacy risks. Some examples of this are hallucinations, but also data leakage. Finally, because the Ambient Scribe technology is processing so much sensitive personally identifiable data, you would need to make sure that you're maintaining compliance to data protection regulation. And you would do this by working with your supplier to build a data protection impact assessment that details any new risks to patient data that comes with the use of this technology, and most importantly, considering the mitigations that the supplier has in place to mitigate against these risks. Then, of course, because when using Ambient Scribe technology, you are introducing a new processing activity, you would need to have an updated data processing agreement with your supplier, and also be aware how the data is moving around the system. You would do this by requesting what we refer to as a data flow diagram that showcases how data is moving in the system. And finally, to reduce risk to the data, you would need to ensure that the data is not being retained unnecessarily and that it is being stored in a secure ecosystem in an adequate location, like, for example, the UK or the EU. Now, taking all that into account, I'll now go over how, when utilizing Accurx Scribe, you can also meet and exceed these obligations. I'll start off with the NHS requirements for suppliers. So firstly, I would like to confirm that all Accurx products, including Accurx Scribe, are regularly penetration tested. As a long-standing supplier to the NHS, we are also compliant to the DSPT toolkit with exceeding standards, and we are also Cyber Essentials Plus certified. Over and above all of this, we are also ISO 27001 certified, which basically is an accreditation that represents the gold standard of security practices. And finally, we have robust processes in place already to manage and recover from incidents, and we have integrated Accurx Scribe into these processes. We would be able to provide you with all the evidence of these certifications upon request. I believe even after this webinar, we will also be sharing them. Now, moving on to NHSC AI guidance, because as I said, when using Accurx Scribe, you are creating a lot of PII. We wanted to ensure that the data being created by Accurx Scribe has enhanced protection. And this is why the data is protected with role-based access control. It is also encrypted to reduce risk of unauthorized access or data leakage. And it continues, along with all our other data, being hosted in secure Azure infrastructure, and it does not leave the EU. In addition to all of that, you will also notice that when using Ambient Scribe, your login is protected by multi-factor authentication, which further reduces risk of unauthorized access. And any actions you perform using Accurx Scribe are logged for traceability purposes in case you need them. And finally, as Satya mentioned, we are using reputable and tested models to reduce security and privacy risks that come with AI technology, like, for example, hallucinations or data leakage. Now, Accurx has always held very high standards around patient privacy, and we continue to do so with this technology. So this is why we have documented a very detailed data protection impact assessment that details relevant risks, but most importantly, the mitigations that we have put into place when we came to building and using and integrating with this Ambient Scribe technology. And we are able to share this DPIA for your review so that you can make it your own as the data controller. Because when using Accurx Scribe, then you are also introducing a new processing activity, we have also updated our data processing agreements, which you can review and then accept. And here I really want to note that patient data is not being used for model training, so of course it was not included into the updated DPA. Finally, around the data minimization, so to reduce unnecessary risk, I wanted to confirm that the audio recording is not retained. It is processed and then immediately deleted, and the transcription and the summarization data is also being deleted after 30 days. And finally, no data is being stored on user devices. It is only being stored in our secure infrastructure where it is also encrypted, as I mentioned earlier. So in summary, to all of that I have just said, actions that are required by you when onboarding Accurx Scribe, you will need to review our data processing impact, our DPIA that we will be able to provide you with. You would review it and make it your own. You would need to review the new processing activity in our DPA and accept it. And if you have any questions, you can ask, and we have a privacy team on hand to answer any questions. It's very important, as Satya mentioned, that you would review the outputs so to reduce risk of hallucinations or bias and discrimination. And very importantly, should you have any concerns around the outputs, you would raise those with us so that we would immediately investigate them through our incident management processes. Finally, we are also able to provide you with our ISO 27001 and Cyber Essentials certificates. As I said, we're able to provide you with our DPIA template, our penetration test result summary. And if you go on our website, we have also put together a very detailed set of FAQs around the most pressing queries around AI that you would be able to access and utilize at your own discretion. That's it from me. Thank you. I'll hand over to Osman.
Hi, thanks, team. So I'm just going to talk through an approach that we've done in North East London to implementing the Scribe, and I'm going to go through the process that we've piloted in a few practices and are going to be rolling out to all of our practices across North East London. So to start with, we've got a practice level process. So there's 3 bits to this. There's the data protection impact assessment that we're doing across the ICB. So we're using the ICB level DPO to put that together based on the details that Accurx have provided. And then we're getting each practice to individually do a clinical safety assessment that we are supporting at the ICB. And by supporting, what I mean is that we're trying to collate all of the hazards that are being raised through that process, and then sharing them and having a ICB level review of all of those so that we can monitor and see how that goes over time and whether we need to make changes or recommendations as a new tool that we're using across our practices. And what the clinical safety assessment really does generate, we find really useful, is an implementation plan. So what we've done is to simplify the clinical safety assessment to transfer that into an implementation plan that's really easy for practices to understand. And I've just demonstrated that in a visual form over the next few slides. So we've basically got a document that each practice will get, which is an implementation guide. And within that, there's several sections. So the first section we've got is one that just gives us a list of some key actions. So things like appointing somebody to lead the process and to make sure that we've got adequate training in place, and we've done the DPIA and the DCBO and 60, so just a bit of an oversight that you've heard already. And then the next bit that was really, really important is to have a induction before the scribe is used. So as an induction across the practice or with users, there's several things, and these are points that have come out of our clinical safety case and some of our mitigations. So things like keeping a register of who's using it, to make sure that they know what they need to be doing, such as taking consent at the beginning of a consultation. And then if we move on to the next section, we've also got a section where we're looking at actually at regular intervals. So we've suggested every 1 to 3 months to have this as part of the meetings. So and that could include things like reviewing notes and doing audits of those, looking at any support that practices might need as well. So all of this is bespoke to practice based on the clinical safety outcomes. And as well as that, there's also what we've got called a post-evaluation review as well. So once people have been using it for some time, there's another set of meetings that can be done. And what we also included within the implementation plans is a list of key risks, and these have again been generated from the clinical safety documentation. And what we've done in North East London to achieve this is that we've used a third-party provider to help us support the documentation, the collation of all of these risks, and then put them together into a document for the ICB to do. So that's how we're running it. And at the ICB level, what we've done is that we're really supporting the first two, the data protection impact assessment and the clinical safety assessments. Implementation plan will come out of the clinical safety review and is kind of bespoke for each practice. And what we've really focused on is providing some overarching support for our practices for that. And the oversight really on the next slide kind of demonstrates what we're doing. We're kind of using that overarching risk assessment. So at an ICB level, we'll be reviewing the risks that have come through, reviewing the hazards logs that have come through, and providing other recommendations, and then really focusing on the practical safety cases that practices can generate, and to make sure that they're updated on a regular basis. And alongside that, once the cases are updated, the implementation plan will also get updated, and any tweaks that need to be done will be devolved down to practices. So that's the kind of approach that we've taken. Other areas can certainly do at a practice level. We've just decided to do some overarching support for our practices. Practically, how we're using it. So in our pilot practices, we've got lots of usage going on, and primarily face-to-face, telephone, usually over the speakerphone, and it's really, we're getting feedback that it's better for longer consultations rather than shorter consultations, and it really helps with mental fatigue really that can occur from those longer consultations. And some of the ways that it has been used, we've tried various bits of ways of using the ambient scribes, and the feedback we've got is that the first thing is that actually lapel mics aren't really helpful, so we're not using lapel mics, and we've got a cross behind that in our general guide. And then the next thing that we can use are webcam microphones. Some webcam microphones are better than others, and some are more unidirectional, then capturing a wide area within a consulting room. So that can be really variable. So that will require some testing. So we put a question mark against that. That may or may not be a good thing to use. Some of you may have seen the disc microphones, which are desktop microphones, which are multi-directional and can work really well. So that's something that we encourage the use of. And then the other way of consulting is through the smartphone, and we've been keen to try this, and we've piloted this as well. And we found it really helpful to actually using the smartphone microphone, and that's been really, really successful in terms of picking up voice and transcribing that into the tool as well. So that's basically our experience.
I think we've got some time for some Q&As. Please do use the upvoting function for the most kind of pressing questions that you would like to see answered. And so I'll start from the ones that I can see here. So under current gold standard, the clinician writes their notes line by line. There are pop-ups that trigger upon adding specific SNOMED codes. These are provided by the EPR and third-party authors. Do these still trigger when Accurx auto files its entries, or will they be absent? And I'll probably pass that question over to Vish to answer, who's been working on some of the coding and save to record functionality.
Thanks, Satya. So, I can see that also one of our members of the clinical team, Dr. Khan's also writing a response for this particular question. So when it comes to, adding specific Snowman codes, at the moment when you save a scribe note to the record, it will just save those specific codes that have come from that scribe. So there won't be any pop-ups, let's say, of any additional codes that come up at that point. But it'll be really useful to learn more about what are those kind of those pop-ups that you expect to see when popping up when saving anything to the record, including the scribe. So Rob, I'm sure will answer with a few more details from a practical technical perspective. But at the moment, the only codes that we save are those observational codes that we have in that list, and there won't be any pop-ups that come with that for now.
And I think that's linked to a slightly linked but slightly different question. Can Accurx absorb anything in the existing notes, read access for recent context?
So at the moment it doesn't do that, and this points a little bit towards what Satya was mentioning earlier about that additional functionality that we would look to explore down the line. At the moment, it doesn't absorb any context straight from the medical record to then put it into the notes. What you can do is copy that additional context from the EPR and paste it into your add additional text as part of that functionality. So yeah, hope that answers that question.
Thank you. And we've got some love for Osman in the chats, and ICBs being the key, supporting practices with CSO, without a CSO to complete their DPIA DCB 0160. Just to reinforce there as well, Accurx can also support you through that. So if you do need help navigating to the clinical safety documentations, whilst we certainly cannot complete it for you, we can certainly share the context in terms of understanding where the risk lies and the impact of that on clinical and patient experience and safety. Just looking through the other questions, so I presume we purchase our own microphones. If so, do you have recommended brands? And so we are actually we will have two versions. So the first one is that you will be able to access the microphone on the Accurx mobile experience. We've done a lot of work to make sure that captures a good quality of transcription summarization. Tandem will also be sharing mics, so you can get a Tandem mic, and that is very, very good at capturing kind of the audio quality as well. We don't have kind of recommended brands, but we are looking at how we can make sure that practices have access to high quality microphones to be able to use Accurx Scribe in of itself. Do we need ICB permission? We are underbased in Manchester. I think I might just focus on the first one there, Osman, for you. Do you need ICB permission?
So at practice level, you can certainly do this at practice level, although you will need your review from the ICB, because effectively you're using their machines to carry out to use these tools. So I would go with the ICB's blessing, and it will be worth just having a discussion at ICB level to make sure that they are on board and supportive of the approach. I'll probably want to go one step further and get the ICB to really engage with the process, because it's not just one practice that will be asking the ICB, it'll be multiple, and it might be worth just doing it as a group of practices to really focus on getting support from the IT teams and governance teams.
Thank you. The questions are just shifting, so do bear with me. If I don't manage to get to yours, I will do my best. So the question ran, can you link with Rio the note software used in mental health trusts? I know my local mental health trust clinicians would love to use it. And so we are currently working on a Rio integration, and we are hoping to get that live. In the interim, for mental health trust clinicians that are using Accurx Scribe, you can copy and post the summarization into your EPR of choice, whether that's Rio or any other EPR. There we go. There's another question. So when you sought consent on the demonstrator, it's just jumped around. Demonstrated demo early in the presentation, you paused the recording, then restarted it after consent. Do we have to document consents into the notes on each consultation? How can we prove consent if the patient later challenges this? Be interested to know your experience of using this live, Osman, what you've been doing kind of in your consultations.
So with the
consent.
Yeah, with the consent. Yeah, exactly. So with the consent, we are basically requesting that all our clinicians do the consent before every consultation. And just similar to what Vish did, we just explained the fact that this is going to be supporting us to transcribe the notes using AI, and whether the patients are are happy for us to do that. And a lot of the time it is very much accepted, patients to understand it. I think there's a handful that may object or don't understand. We've tended to avoid using it with patients where English isn't really an understandable language, because that can create understanding issues, and that was where we probably reserve not using it.
Fab, thank you. There's a question here around, I'm concerned that they all get lumped. I assume that's kind of Accurx consultations under the single heading of an Accurx consultation, whatever the content. That is something we are aware of. We are looking to try and change that. It does have some complexity to it in the way that we save into the EPRs of EMIS in System 1. So we are very aware of that. I don't have a response for you now, but it's something we are looking to address so that actually you can capture what type of consultation, and also the fact that it's being supported by the use of a scribe as well. Can you please let me know when the functionality to allow Scribe to pick up system audio for soft phones will be available? So that isn't currently available. You could have the transcription live, you could have Tandem running. It wouldn't currently be able to pick up soft phones, but that is something we will look at. Oh, go on, Osman.
Yeah, well, one thing that we've done with that is some clinicians are just basically summarizing back. So when the patients say something, then they just repeat it back, just a way of chunking and checking, really. And that's worked really well to try to pick up if using soft phones as well.
I've done a horrible job of timekeeping, so we are to time there. Thank you very much for joining. And like I said, we will follow up with the both the recording and the slides that we shared today, as well as some additional resources for all the things that we've talked about in the webinar. And please do just take a moment to answer kind of the follow-up question that we've put in the poll there. And again, thank you very much for your time joining us on a Thursday during lunchtime. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you all.